All right. Welcome, 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 welcome. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for joining me. And thank you for being here, whether you are live or watching the recording. I am honored to be trusted with this really precious topic right now, is how it feels. If we haven't met before, I'm Dr. Marcie. I'm a parenting and mental health expert, and I work with families to help bring more happiness into homes. And to me, this conversation feels really important because it is a huge conversation that so many of us don't know how to have with grace. So the topic today is parenting with love in a time of hate. A couple weeks ago, I did another webinar on how to talk to your kids about war. And the conversation is continuing to evolve as the world and the situations in Israel and Gaza and around the world around that continue to evolve. And so I'm going to be here to share my tools, my thoughts on how to have these conversations, not what the content is. That is between you and your family. But how do we move forward? How do we find our way through this with love? It's a really big question at the moment. So first and foremost, I'm also going to ask for grace, because I am a human just like you going through this experience, and I am doing my best. So I have my own personal feelings, my own personal heartbreak. And so please know that my intention is to hold this space with love, with compassion, with curiosity, with openness to the best of my ability. And if at any point I say anything that does not feel good to you, that does not land well, please know that that was not my intention. And let's talk about it, because I do believe that the way we heal through this is by having conversations together about the things that didn't land well, that didn't feel good, that didn't, perhaps the intention did not match the impact. So please know that. So we are all in this together. And so I am welcoming this space for anyone and everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what your beliefs are. If you want to learn how to parent with more love in this moment, then please come. We are all going to need to come together in order to move forward. It's the only way I see it. I don't have the big global answers. I don't have the answer to how to stop war. I don't have any of those answers. But what I do have is, how do we have a conversation? How do you talk to your kids? How do we mend bridges? And I do some of that by thinking about this on a smaller scale. I think when I read the news, when I think about what's happening in the world, it is overwhelming. It is complicated. It is confusing. I am bewildered. There just seems to be so much in so many ways that I don't have answers for. So when I find that being the situation for myself, I step back and say, well, what can I understand? So some of this conversation is going to be how I have simplified this in my own head to make it make sense. But some of it is also that we have to simplify it in order for you and me to have a conversation about this. We can't converse about things that are beyond our control, that are outside of our realm, but we can come together and find a way to understand each other, to teach our kids to understand each other. Whether we agree or disagree, that's okay, as long as we do it with some compassion and understanding and love. I do really, truly believe that love is the answer. I know, like, I say that out loud right now, and it sounds so cheesy. It sounds so cheesy. I also think it's really true. The only way that I know to combat hate is to bring back the humanity and to lead with love. That's all I know. And, well, I hope I know a few more things than that. But when we step back from that, it's how do we show up with love? How is love the answer in this moment when it is so hard? When there is so much hate and division and destruction and death and grief and heartbreak. And some of it is by simply stating that that's what's happening. Some of it, I think, is by not trying to make my pain or my grief have to be in comparison to your pain or your grief. Any life that is taken is tragic, in my opinion. We all should be able to live in a home where we feel safe. Again, my opinion, but that is where I'm coming from today. There doesn't have to be a, my pain is worse than yours. There doesn't have to be a, my experience is harder than yours. Hard is hard. And if we come from this place for our kids, where it's not a race of, or a comparison or a judgment of who has it worse right now, but it's, I can meet you in your pain. You can meet me in my pain without taking away from each other. And that is the start of this conversation. And if we can show up as humans in the world that way, then perhaps we can start making changes. So all of this is because in order for us to parent with love, we have to know it within ourselves first. So when I was conceptualizing putting together this webinar, when I was thinking about it, I kept thinking about what's my role? What do I believe? What do I know to be true? What can I do in this moment? I think so many of us want to do something. We want to help be part of the solution. We want to heal. We want to move forward. We want something that's going to help us make any sense out of all of this. So I went back and I thought, well, what do I know? Well, as I already shared, I know that I believe that every life is valuable. I know that everyone deserves a home where they feel safe. And that is my starting place. But I also believe that we are capable of love and forgiveness in the face of tragedy. I believe we can respect people who think differently than us. And I believe that love is stronger than hate. I will say I have moments right now where that feels really hard to believe, but I believe that in my core. And so those are things that I want us to be talking to our kids about. I want us to be teaching our families about. I want that to be part of the conversation that's happening right now. So again, I don't have the global answer. I don't have the solution to world peace. Gosh, I wish I did. I don't know how to solve the unspeakable circumstances that we're in because I don't have that. But I do know that all of these experiences are made up of humans, and that I really believe that we all just want to feel valued and cared for, and that every voice that is yelling out with hatred is because they don't feel valued. And so I sat back and I thought, what are the tools that make us feel valued? How can we find that? What's missing here? And so I broke it down to the smaller scale, and what is missing in my heart? What is missing in my family? What is missing in the families that I work with and speak with? What do we need to bring back and focus on? Because focusing on the division and focusing on the hatred isn't going to make it any worse. It's going to make us more divided. So I want to find a way to create a ripple of love, and find ways for us to get connected again. And so in thinking about all this yesterday, I actually happened to be watching an interview of a mother who is very personally connected to what is going on in the world right now. And she started talking about this movement of mothers reaching out to mothers that I hadn't heard about before. And she was talking about how in this horrific moment, there are mothers everywhere that are taking care of other people's children. That in the places in Israel and the places in Gaza where parents have been murdered, that some other woman is stepping in and mothering that child. That as a mother, you can put yourself in the shoes of another mother who just wants to know that their child is safe. And she is now part of a movement of mothers reaching out to other mothers around the world to kind of build these bridges. to build this conversation of outside of politics, outside of policy, how do we find peace? How do we come together and bring back the humanity in it? And I thought that that was so beautiful and so necessary, that in this mother's own grieving, she was able to say, and there is another mother on the other side of the street, on the other side of this conversation, who is feeling the same thing as me. And to me, that's the answer. When we can realize the humanity of everyone who is in this experience, and we bring that back to our families, that's how we start to move forward. That's how we start to take steps in healing, in changing this. It's also how we make sure that we're not perpetuating this hate, that we're not building more of this. It is so easy when someone says horrific things about you to fight back. That's what we want to do, right? You're mean to me, I want to be mean back. But if I take this into a smaller scale and I think about what I know to be true, what I know we've taught our kids for years and years and years and years and years before this past month, is that when someone is mean to you, the answer is not to be mean back, right? If someone on the playground calls you stupid, the answer isn't to call them an idiot. And while it might feel ridiculous, because it does feel a little ridiculous to make this comparison, someone coming at me with hate, my answer isn't to hate them back. Someone wanting to take away my voice doesn't mean I should take away theirs. But what do we teach our kids? If someone calls them stupid, we ask for help. Well, that feels like a very complicated answer right now. But we also sometimes teach them to show up with kindness, to ignore it, to still be nice to that person. I've had enough conversations around bullying and friendship and resiliency and conflict and de-escalation to know that the answer, when someone is really upset with you and in your face, is not to get bigger and angrier and louder. Because when our emotions are really high, we can't have productive conversations. And that's some of what's happening right now. Our emotions are really high. So we're not having productive conversations. And we're just getting it louder and louder and louder and louder. And so we have to, for our kids and for ourselves, find our ways back to, well, how do I de-escalate myself and my family in this moment? How do I show up for my kids and teach them that when someone on the playground is mean to them, they're not supposed to be mean back. And in this moment, when someone's mean to me, I'm not supposed to be mean back. It feels, I will be very honest, it feels crazy saying that when someone comes to you, like I'm Jewish, if someone comes to me with anti-Semitic language, if you're Islamic and someone is coming to you with Islamophobic information, if you're a Muslim and are receiving some of that feeling back, it's just really hard to say, like, just don't call them an idiot back. But that is also part of the truth. If we just meet hate with hate, it's going to get a lot worse. And so we have to, in some ways, find a way to build a bridge over that hate. And I think that that answer is love. To remember that that person saying those words is a human who wants to feel valued and seen. Might not be how they're acting, might be really hard to see that in that moment, but that's what's going on. And so how can we connect with them? How can we find our way to relate to people on the other side of the street of this conversation, rather than just yelling at each other? So how do we do that? Well, I am a behaviorist at heart, so I thought about some tools about how do we do this? How do you within your family talk to your kids about this? Talk to family members about this? So for me, it started with thinking about our values. What are the values that aren't showing up right now? And maybe they still are in your home and you're just not seeing them in the world. But what are the things that feel missing right now? I mean, outside of love. I'm just going to assume that you want love because you're here. But outside of that, what else is missing? And if you want to be brave and put things in the chat about what's missing, I'd love to have it there. but maybe you just want to write a list for yourself. What are the values that you think are missing? And I'm going to let you know that I will give you the answer to this because I think that that's really helpful when leading a webinar to tell you the answer. But we're going to talk through, I picked the 3 big ones that I think are missing right now. That I think that if we show up with them, if we start practicing them, if we talk to them, to our kids about them, that things could change, at least in your own heart, in your own family, in your own experience. And I do believe that right now, that's all we got. Right now, we have to start with ourselves. And one conversation at a time, we change what's going on. And that feels really huge right now, but that's what it is, right? And again, taking things out of this context sometimes helps me understand that. And so I'm going to share this story of I was doing a training on culture change for the Royal Australian Navy. I met with all of their head coaches and they wanted to create a shift to be a more welcoming environment in the military. Okay, cool. Let's talk mental health in the military. It was great. And I gave them tools. And at the end, someone raised their hand and said, well, that's all great, but it sounds like you want to change this one conversation at a time. And I said, yeah, I do. Because that is how you change culture. We want it to be this big overarching concept that just magically shifts. But the way we create that shift is one moment at a time, one conversation, one interaction. The same is true here. How do we create one conversation at a time that creates a ripple that changes what the landscape currently is? So I'm going to tell you those values so we can start creating a ripple. These are the 3 values that I think might change everything. It's a really big statement. I do pause as I say it because that feels really big. But I think if we remember to be brave, if we bring in more kindness, and if we bring in curiosity, that we can create a big change right now, because I think that's needed. So for each of these, I have concepts and I have action steps for you because I think both are necessary. So what does it mean to be brave? Why is that necessary right now? Being brave is necessary right now because this moment is so hard. It is so hard. I don't think I'm the only one who feels that way, that there are many, many moments where I just want to get in bed under the covers and watch Ted Lasso and never leave my apartment again. I think there are many, many moments where many of us don't want to have the conversation, don't want to do the big thing, but we have to be brave and do it. I will tell you very honestly, I don't want to do this webinar. It scares me. This, right? Like, I love speaking. I can talk about most things all day long. This is terrifying to me. I am so scared right now that I'm going to say the wrong thing. I am so scared that it's going to be taken the wrong way. I am so scared. I don't even know why. It just feels like it's in the air right now. But I chose to be brave and do this because I think we need this right now. I think we need spaces where we are having the hard conversations, where we're willing to say the thing, even if we might get it wrong, because the alternative sucks. So I'm being brave. We need to be brave right now. We need to be willing to step into the places we don't want to step into and have the conversations we don't want to have, because that is the only way we can build these bridges. Because without that, in that void, in that vacuum of conversation, more hatred grows, because there isn't that humanity, which is what we really need right now. So we have to talk to our kids, even though we don't want to. We have to teach them about love and hate, even though we don't want to. I don't know any parent that ever wants to talk to their children about what's happening in the world right now. I don't know any parent that wants their child to go through what kids are going through in the world right now. That doesn't stop it from happening. And the truth is, your kids are going to hear about what's happening in the world, whether it's from you or somewhere else. Kids talk, kids know things. We don't know what it is necessarily or how they're going to get that information. But I want to make sure that your kids are learning about life and values from you, that you are talking to them about being brave, even when you don't want to. And if you want to know how to talk to them, I can send you the link to the other webinar because there's a lot of great content in there about how to have these conversations, small, ongoing conversations where you let your kids ask questions, right? But what are the small steps today to help your kids, to help you be brave? One is notice your language. The words we use matter so much. And in this time when there is so much hate, it is easy to perpetuate that with our language. And so be willing to be brave. And when talking about horrific events, do not use language that stigmatizes people on either side of the conversation. The us versus them language is part of the problem. It is not us versus them. It is people and people and people and people struggling and struggling and struggling and struggling. And when we can remember that, and when we use words that reflect the humanity of what's happening, the devastation of any life that has been taken, well, then our kids know that every life matters. Because you can't just tell them that. You can't say, we are so lucky to have a home where we are safe and where we are protected and where we can lock the door and we know all is well. But other people don't have that right now. And other people are scared in their homes, and other people are losing their homes. So we have to appreciate the home we have. That teaches them about what's happening right now without it being about politics and policy and views and rights and wrongs and all of the things that people are making this about. That brings back the humanity. Use the words, use the language that reflects that. Teach your kids about love. I mean, I think, again, making things really simple. When I talk to parents about siblings getting along, right? If you have two kids, if you have multiple kids, and they're fighting, I talk to parents about when you go in that room, what happened before you got there doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Like, we all want to know. We're all super curious about how we got into this fight. But really, the solution is, how do we do better moving forward? Right? This is what I have taught parents for years and years and years now. I teach teachers the same thing. If you're in the classroom and you see a conflict, don't make assumptions about who's right and who's wrong. And how we got into this situation doesn't matter. What we're going to do moving forward. When I think about that, and I think about teaching our kids about love, and I think about the current war we're talking about, it feels really complicated in my head to make it that simple. But if it is that simple, it means that all of the history and all of the details of the past that everyone is fighting over are not as important as what are we going to do to move forward? How do we make this better? This is where we are today. I can't change that. I can't change the past. I'm not sure what I would have done differently had I known everything I know today anyway, right? Like, I can't change what was, but I can think about, how do I show up with love now? How do I do that moving forward? And teaching your kids about that and holding that concept in relation to what's going on here, maybe will change some of the conversations you're having. Who's owed what to who and how and when and why and what? No, we all are precious. Every life is precious. How do we make sure that we all have a voice, that we all have a place, that we all have a home? I don't know that answer, but it's a good question. And it might change conversations and help your kids to understand that that's where you want to head from. So talk to your kids about love. Teach your kids that, we've had these conversations for years now, right? Like, all of the diversity training we've been having, we know no matter what your skin color, you're still human. No matter what your religion, you're still human. No matter what your your sexual orientation, of who you love. Love is love, right? All of these conversations we've been having for years now. This is the same conversation. It feels really different. It feels like a different conversation, but I'm not sure that it really is. So how do you teach your kids about love? That's what I want you to think about. And then be brave and teach them that, right? That's what this section is. And then I also put out, reach out to a friend. I feel like there are lots of spaces where people are talking about, I haven't talked to this person since, or this person I know has a different view, and therefore, we all know someone on the other side of the street of this conversation. We all know someone who has a different perspective. And for most of us, we're avoiding that conversation. We're avoiding that moment because we don't want to do it, because it feels hard, because we don't want to be in conflict. Well, what if you were brave and reached out to that friend and said, no matter what you believe about this situation, I still care about you. Can we talk about something else for a minute first? Can we talk about this conversation where we're on other sides of the street for 2 minutes? Set a timer, start the conversation, and then stop it. Because we're not going to get anywhere if we just keep fighting with each other. But if we want to teach our kids that they can be friends with everyone in their classroom, that they don't have to be best friends with everyone in their class, but they have to be respectful and kind to everyone in their class, then maybe we need to practice and demonstrate that behavior by being kind to the people that we care about, even if they have a different perspective and opinion than we have. Model being brave, model being compassionate by having those conversations. And if you've heard me speak before, you know that I love doing some exercises to help ground these things in us. So we're now going to say, I am brave 10 times together, because sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we can do the hard thing. And sometimes, better than telling ourselves that we can do a hard thing, we need to remind ourselves that we are brave. And doing this with your kids, especially if they are feeling the impact, right? I think of families I know whose kids are scared right now, whose kids are being told bad things from people around them, and they are scared. Do this with your kids. Teach them to feel brave while you have these really hard conversations with them. It's not about being brave and running into the middle of a situation you shouldn't be in. It's about doing it in a measured way, but let's be brave together. So 10 times we're going to say out loud, I am brave. And if you want bonus points, you can stand in superhero pose, which means legs wide and hands on hips, because that helps our body remember that we are brave. Okay, so 10 times. I am brave. 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 That is 10. Together, we are brave. And we can bring in love. All right, thank you for doing that with me. Now let's talk about kindness. What does it mean to be kind? What does it mean to be kind in a time of hate? Well, I think that kindness is the answer to so much. I mean, maybe not everything, but to so much. Kindness is part of acting with love, right? I can be kind to a person that I don't like. I can be kind to a person I disagree with. I can be kind to a person who has done things I don't agree with. Kindness doesn't mean that you are, I don't even have the right words at the moment. It doesn't mean that you're saying, yes, I agree with you. You're the best thing ever. No, but being kind just shows people how you want to be treated. Being kind helps people understand humanity. It allows people to feel that they matter, which is so much of what I think is going on, is that people think that they don't matter. And they all do. We all do. We teach our kids to say please and thank you. We teach our kids to respect their teachers. We teach our kids to say no when they don't, kindly to friends when they don't want to play. We teach our kids to be kind all the time. Yet right now, it's one of the things that's missing. It's one of the things that I keep looking for that I think is really missing. How do we have these hard conversations with kindness? What would that look like? So that would look like noticing your language again, because we can say the same thing with hatred or with kindness. We can answer unkind things with kindness. Our words matter. Our words make a difference. And we can say, so again, I love simple examples. I went to get my car washed the other day, and I went in to pay, and the guy behind the counter, there was another woman in there, and apparently they were having a fight over something, and someone else came in and was dealing with her. And on the table, he like slipped me the finger, like he was giving me the finger, but like on the desk. And I was super confused. And so I looked at him kind of like this, like, why are you giving me the finger? I just want to pay for my car wash. And he's like, oh, it's for her. Pass it on. Pass it on. Like I'm in third grade and we're passing a mean note about somebody. But I was like, you're a grown adult and you want me to pass the finger to a lady because she has some comment about what's happening here that you don't like. And I looked at him and I went, yeah, that's not my style. And he's like, yeah, but she deserves it. I said, yeah, but that's not my style. And it was one of those moments that felt so confusing to me, because it felt, A, like, how did I get here? But B, I almost did it simply because it was like easier to just do the thing that someone was asking me to do, right? Like that ease of, I'm just going to follow along. And I'm really glad I didn't, because that's really not my style. And it's kind of icky even to think about it. But notice your language of like, this woman came in and was upset about something. And so this guy wanted to flip her off, as opposed to being like, gosh, she's having a hard day. Gosh, she's having some big feelings. Wow, maybe we did something wrong. Like maybe the car wash actually owes her an apology for something. I don't know. Wasn't my fight to be in. So I wasn't going to be in it. But so notice your language, because I could have come back at him and been like, well, what's wrong with you that you want to do that to her? I could have shown up to fight. I could have passed along the negativity. I could have done a lot of things, but instead I showed up to him with kindness. We are in a moment where I feel like a lot of conversations are kind of that kerfuffliness of things. Like we're just passing along information, sometimes that we've thought about and believe, sometimes that we don't. It just sounded good, so now I'm going to say this. Sometimes we're just passing along someone else's anger. Sometimes it's just easier to get on board with what a friend is saying than to actually stop and think what's true for yourself, or what a movement is saying, or what an organization that you have believed in for a long time is saying. Part of being a parent in this moment is stopping and thinking, is this true for me? And is this something I want to teach my kids about? And there might be things that you're like, yeah, this I want to stand behind. And there might be other things where you're like, actually, no, this piece I'm not down with. So notice your language and don't perpetuate things that don't actually resonate true with you and that aren't kind. Just because someone's in your space complaining doesn't mean you need to flip them off. There might be a different way to show them compassion. It also made me wonder what was going on in both of their lives. Because often, the phrase hurt people, it's true. So when I've come into conversations with people who are really angry and really fired up, I always wonder, like, who have you lost? What is this touching in you that is making you so hurt, aka angry or hateful? But there's a reason for it that might not have anything to do with me or whatever they think I stand for. So I can still show back with kindness in my language, no matter what somebody is coming at me with. Notice your feelings. There have been, just a handful of times that I've had some big feelings in this past month where I've been in the middle of a conversation and can feel rage coming up inside me, just like, what is happening? And I stop the conversation because having worked in the field of mental health, I know I am not productive or clear when I get there. But for so many of us, we don't realize how fired up we are, how angry we are, and we keep going in the conversation. So this means having conversations with loved ones, having conversations with your kids. If you are feeling overwhelming emotion about the conversation, you have to stop it because it's not productive. And you're going to convey things to your kids. You're going to convey things to that person that you don't necessarily mean in the way you're saying them. You might mean it, but you might not mean it that way. Again, that kindness that matters. So if you are really fired up about something that's going on, that might not be the moment to have the conversation with your child about it. If you have a teen who wants to have all the big conversations, you might need to walk away from some of them and be like, I need to think about this. I need to collect myself and then come back. Because we have to model for our kids kindness, no matter how angry we are or overwhelmed or hurt or frustrated or confused or angry, or I don't know what other big words to use right now because I feel like all of them happen at once for me at times. We need to notice that that is how we're feeling. And we need to notice if we do not feel like we can be kind in that moment and not continue with the conversation right there, right? The third thing on the small step we can do is pause. I don't have to have every conversation in every moment that it arises. I can say, I need to take a breath so that I can keep having this conversation. I need to take a break. That pause might also mean like you need self-care time, right? If you are a parent and you are busy with kids, where and when and how are you digesting all of this information? You might need 5 minutes in the bathroom to go breathe, right? You might need to up your self-care practices. But you get to pause any conversation that you are not ready to continue, whether it's with your kids or anyone else. Because if you can't show up with kindness, we have to pause. Because that modeling is powerful. If you start talking, notice the language, if you start using language about people on the other side of the street that isn't kind, your kids are going to repeat it. And it's not going to make any of this any better for them or anyone else. But if you pause and you say, I'm not clear right now. I want to answer your questions, but I can't in this moment. Let's pick this up after dinner. And you get to take a break and breathe. Okay. What's also occurring to me is that you might want to take a pause from like watching media or scrolling social media. I've decided I'm only allowed to check in every other day now with the news because it was just too much for me. I have a very dear friend who I know watches the news every day, and she knows that I have made this agreement with myself. So if something big happens, she's going to let me know. But I can only do it every other day because that's what my heart can manage. That is how I can stay in love and informed. I can't do it every day, so I don't. You get to make whatever choice is right for you, what choice is right for your family, but consider where you need pauses. So here's the exercise we're going to do around kindness, something that I call the rule of 3. And so I usually use this when siblings are fighting, or when in a classroom there's like a kid in the class that your kid doesn't like, and they're like, they're awful. I do the rule of 3, which is naming 3 things about that other person that is good. I mean, if you can get to what's great about that person, that's awesome. So in this moment, I want you to think in your head of someone you know who is on the other side of this conversation with you. It could be, I know people whose like their children are on the other side of the conversation from them. It can be a family member. It can be a friend. Who is on the other side of the street from where you are? I want you to think of that person. And then I want you to think of 3 things that are actually good about them. Okay, while you are doing this in your own head, in your own space, I'm going to do this out loud so that you see what this looks like. Okay. So I have a very dear friend, and he is on the other side of the street from me in this conversation. And we have had some really hard conversations over the past month. And one of the things that I think is great about him is that he's always willing to come back. He's always willing to say, okay, we disagree, but like, let's talk again in a couple of days. Like, let's come back to this conversation. I never feel like our differences on this very charged subject are putting our friendship at jeopardy. I love that. So that's one. Two, he's really funny. It's really funny. Just as a person, he is funny. And three, he is somebody who I believe wants the world to be a better place. Like, he wants good in the world. So even though we disagree on what that actually looks like right now, he wants the world to be a better place. He wants there to be less hatred and more love. Now, I have to say, having done that, I'm like, oh, I should call him and tell him how much I like him as a human in the world, right? When we remember that people are bigger than this one conversation right now, we are boiling everyone down to which side of the street they're on. We are dividing people up as to whether you are with me or against me. And that might not actually be the conversation we're really having. Or maybe I should say it this way, does it have to be the conversation that we're having? And when we do the rule of three, we remember that people are bigger than this one topic. Yes, it is one huge topic, but there are other good things in there. And remembering that will help us build the bridge. Where is that commonality with that person? Why do we care about them? Why were they in our lives before all of this? Because maybe we'll see some hints as to why they can stay. And if we can start building the bridge of people we know and care about who are on the other side of the street, it gives me hope, because that is a step towards how do we build it on the other side. It also shows our kids that this is not an all or nothing conversation. It shows them how to be kind, which is what we need. Okay. Our third value is curiosity, which I'm not completely sure is is a value, but it feels like it is. So I'm using it as that word, as that term right here. So curiosity heals. I feel like so many of the conversations that are happening, so much of the division is because we are having conversations to convince someone else that we are right and they are wrong. And when you go into any conversation wanting to convince somebody of something, it's not always productive or helpful, especially when they're trying to convince you that they're right and you're wrong. What changes when we show up with curiosity is that we're not trying to convince anyone of anything. We're just trying to build understanding. We're just trying to find our way to some semblance of understanding of where that person is and how they think that. When we show up with curiosity, we acknowledge that we don't know everything and that there might be something interesting in their perspective. Doesn't mean that it has to be true for you. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them. But if you acknowledge that there is something in their perspective that may be interesting to you, then you bring back humanity. You bring back the feeling to that other person that they have something to say and you're willing to listen, which we all want because that makes us feel valued. When I was thinking about this value, it made me think of the story of the elephant and the 6 blind men. If you don't know this story, I'm going to tell it to you briefly. So there were 6 blind men living in a town, and there were lots of elephants in the area. But they had never seen one, but they had heard the townspeople talk about the elephants over and over and over again. And they were like, gosh, one day we're going to go and we're going to be able to feel an elephant, because we can't see. They were all blind, but we could feel it. And so one day, one of the men in town said, I will take you. I'll take you to go see an elephant. And then you'll know what it's like. So the 6 blind men and the guide go, and they find an elephant, happens to be in the royal castle. And so they go, and the first man walks up to the elephant and he feels the trunk. He's like, oh, I see now. I see. An elephant is like a snake, long and thin and strong. Okay, an elephant is like a snake. The other 5 are like, all right. Second man goes, and he feels the tusks. He's like, what are you talking about? I understand now. An elephant is like a spear, strong and pointy and smooth. 4 other guys are like, okay, I'm ready for my turn. Third guy goes, and he is at the side of the elephant along their belly. And he's like, no, it just keeps going. An elephant is like a wall, immovable and vast. What were you guys talking about? Last 3 are like, wait, my turn. The 4th goes, and he's at the ear of the elephant. And he's like, you all have it wrong. An elephant is like a fan, just like a fan. And the 5th guy goes, and he's at a leg. He's like, what are you all talking about? An elephant is like a tree trunk, round and solid, immovable. And the last guy's super curious, and he walks over and he's like, what is happening? So he goes over and he gets the tail, and he's like, you're all wrong. An elephant is like a rope. And they're arguing and what's happening and who's wrong. And the prince comes down out of the castle, and he's like, what is this racket? Why are you all yelling so much? And they all tell him, well, I think the elephant is like a tree, and he thinks the elephant's like a rope, and he thinks the elephant's like a fan. And the prince goes, well, you're all right. You just got different parts. His ear is like a fan. His leg is like a tree trunk. His nose is like a snake. And he puts it all together. And the blind men finally go, we all only had one piece. We all only had one piece. And they needed somebody else to put all of the things together. Maybe if we show up with curiosity, if we teach our kids to be curious about what other people think and see and feel and experience, we can remember that we only get one piece of the elephant. We only know our part. And there are other truths out there. There are other experiences out there. There are other perspectives out there. We don't have to be wrong for someone else to be right. In this moment, talking about this war, the difference is, at least in my experience, it's crazy making. Like, I'm like, how can those 2 things both be true? And it feels so like it has to be your story or my story. But what if it wasn't? What if there is some collective that we're not seeing? What if there's some possibility that they just have a different piece of the elephant? Like, maybe that's true. So you can tell your kids the story of the elephant. And while you don't necessarily have to connect it to the war for them, it will teach them to be curious of, what did the other person see? What is your view of what just happened? So how do we put curiosity into action? Well, we ask questions. We ask genuine questions, and then we wait for the answer. We don't use questions as a setup to prove that you're wrong and I'm right, but we genuinely ask, what do you think is happening? How do you see this? We ask our kids, how do they feel about this? What are they hearing at school? What do they feel? Just ask the questions and let them share. We have to listen. We have to teach our kids to listen. We are so busy fighting and defending and protecting right now. We're not listening. We're too scared to listen sometimes. We're too angry to listen other times. But we're not listening. And we're never going to move forward if we don't listen. Think about the people in your life that you love. At the end of the day, when it's someone you love and you're like, how is your day? You kind of lean in because you really want to know how their day is. Think about when your kids come home from school and you want to know every detail of what happened in school. It's because you love them, that you're listening to them. In this world filled with hate, we have stopped listening. If we want to move forward with love, we have to listen to what other people are saying, even if we don't like it. But it gives them a space to feel loved. And then connect to understand. We are so often having these conversations, either kind of within an echo chamber, people who are on the same side of the street as us, reinforcing that we're right and they're wrong, right? That language. Or we're fighting with someone, we're having a conversation with someone on the other side of the street to convince them, to prove to them that they're wrong and we're right. What if we just connected to understand how is that your logic? Where did you learn that? How is that your understanding? And what if it wasn't to form an agreement or to believe their beliefs, but what if it was just to understand how they are, who they are, how they believe what they believe? Because that lets people feel valued. And we kind of need that right now. This is all about humanity. This is all about humanity. And when we remember that parenting with love and moving from love is about teaching our kids and remembering for ourselves that every person in this experience is a person who deserves humanity, it changes the conversation. Changes the conversation. And I think that that is how we shift everything that's going on. So I want to do one final experience together. And then I'm going to stop the recording and take any questions that you guys have. I just know sometimes there are questions that people don't want recorded. Okay. So if you have questions, know that I'm here for it. So we're going to do a loving kindness meditation. And this is a meditation where we're going to go through these 5 lines a few different times. The first time we're going to say it for ourselves. The second time we're going to say it for someone we love who is hurting right now. The third time we are going to say it for someone on the other side of the street who we're struggling with right now. And then we're going to say it as a collective for all. Okay. We do it as a call and response. So I'll say a line, then you repeat it back, and I'll tell you who we're doing it for as we do it. But there are lots of different versions of loving kindness meditations, but there is lots of different information out there about how it is so helpful to have these type of practices for not just to build loving kindness for ourselves, but to build love and kindness in the world. So again, this can be an exercise you do with your kids as well. Okay. So I often put my hands on my heart because it just helps me connect into love. You're invited to do that if that feels good to you. If you want to close your eyes and do this like a meditation, you can. If it is more helpful for you to read them, the words, that's fine too. But I'm going to read them. You'll repeat it and I'll remind you of who this is for. Okay. So this is for you. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live in peace no matter what I am given. May my heart be filled with love and kindness. Now we're going to do this round for someone you love who needs some healing. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live in peace no matter what you are given. May your heart be filled with love and kindness. Now I want you to think of either someone you know or conceptually someone on the other side of the street of this conversation from you. May they be safe. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they live in peace no matter what they are given. May their hearts be filled with love and kindness. We're going to do one final round for all of us. for all of the people on this planet, because we all need a little bit of extra love right now. May we be safe. May we be happy. May we be healthy. May we live in peace no matter what we are given. May our hearts be filled with love and kindness. I want to say thank you for taking the time, for being here with me. I do not know what is next. There may be another webinar. There may be something else. If there's some way that you know that I can help and support you, please let me know. My email is on the bottom. So if you are here live and want to stay for questions, please do. I will be here. If you are watching the recording or here live and have questions after the recording has finished, please know that I am here to help you. So reach out with any questions you have and know that we are in this together. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your time.